What we really are taught is don't get in a van with a stranger who has a puppy and offers you candy. And yet we get into Uber and Lyft. We don't let these people into our lives and we have no self-reflection because we're just really not taught. Your traditions, you're taught by your family. Your identity, you're taught about the people who you're around. I focus on my time and my emotions and my energy. And I just cannot believe how much it's changed my communication and my relationships in my personal and professional life. Because I don't believe in balance. There's no work-life balance. It's work-life wellness. Something in your life is always going to be out of balance, in my humble opinion. So if you look at it from a health and wellness standpoint, I'm going to live a work-life wellness lifestyle. I do feel our time is taken for granted so much that we don't realize that there are apps and things to help us. I call it time mindfulness. To be mindful with your time. It's not time management because we roll our eyes at time management.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, an Endeavor business media production. This is episode number 408. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for making us a part of your day. I am absolutely reeling still from this past weekend. I was in Phoenix. I told you last week I was at the Barrier Protect conference in Scottsdale, and it's always a great time going to Arizona. Obviously, as the winter weather is starting to kind of come upon most of the people in the United States, it is a great time to visit Arizona. But it's even better when you have great quality CE content. So if you don't know Dr. Ankur Gupta, you need to put him on your radar. Peel your eyes, open your ears, put him on your radar because he is incredible. The thing I like about him, so first of all, it's great CE, right? But he is really real when he talks. He'll say things that most professionals are maybe too afraid to say because it's not quote unquote professional, right? Crap, sucks, other words. But it's framed around a lesson or a takeaway that makes it that much more memorable. And so you think about, yes, it's funny, but you're never going to forget that tidbit. So he was a keynote and he gave different lectures. And then there were several other really great speakers over this 2-day conference. One of them was Megan Barnett. And I can't remember all of her credentials, but she is a nutritionist, but I mean, way more than that. She works in functional medicine. We had the most amazing lecture from her. Probably could have listened to her for several more hours and just not be bored because she made the things that we're thinking about, the things that get thrown at us at all these other CE courses, extremely relatable. So after she was done lecturing, she was kind enough to sit down with me and join me on the podcast, which I thought was really great. And we did something a little bit unique. She went over my labs with me on air in front of everybody. It's a little bit, I'm fine with my personal information being out there because there's nothing that's, too scary. I'm not dying or anything like that. So, but she broke down each of the tests that are done for the labs, what they were for, how I was doing on them, how to change certain parts of either things I can control or things I can't control to make the labs better or worse. And then she also gave suggestions of other tests that I should probably have done. And if I was working with her, what she would order for me and things that she would want to be given to her so that she could better understand how my body works. It was a really great episode. And I'm not sure that she's taking any long distance clients, but after you listen to that episode, you're just going to want to use her for all sorts of things. She was awesome. So that's going to be coming out in maybe a month or two. So that's why I'm reeling. I'm still just so excited about the whole entire trip. It was very awesome. Thank you to the people at Barrier Protect for letting me do a couple of podcasts while we were there and just being so great to us, overall these last few years. This episode for today though, wow. This one was good. It's with Anastasia Turchetta. We're talking about boundaries. She starts off with a really insightful analogy about how different people have different tolerances of things. And then we take that information, we kind of dive into the different types of boundaries we need to set for ourselves and for others. I mentioned this last week on the episode that one of the key takeaways for me was that maybe I'm not as good at setting boundaries as I thought. that disappearing or withdrawing from people when I don't care how they're treating me or how they're acting, it's not really setting a boundary, right? It's just withdrawing. There are several great lessons like that I learned, that you'll learn. You can use it for your family, your coworkers, even probably your patients a lot of times. So you're in for a treat today. Special thanks to Misty Mattingly for co-hosting this episode with me. So thank you, Misty. And then next week, we sit across from Katie Paulson, who is a fellow podcaster. She also now works in the AI space. And I know that we've been covering sporadically AI here for the last, couple of years, actually. But AI is coming to your office, whether you want to admit it or not. So it's nice to have someone like Katie who can get us excited about it. Or for maybe those who are kind of opposed and can't get excited about it, she makes it a soft landing at least and will help ease you into it. So be sure to come back next week for that episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week. Enjoy this episode with Anastasia.
A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome everyone into the interview portion of the podcast. We are here at ADA SmileCon again for another interview. Glenn Vo's on the main stage over there. You might hear him in the background. He's coming in pretty hot. We're joined today by Anastasia and Gibbs, Special Agent Gibbs. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share this message and just be amongst all this energy.
Yeah. I mean, Anastasia, you're one of those people that we've known each other for a little bit, but not super close. And so when Dr. Rice and I were talking about because they have their podcast over there, we have our podcast over here. I'm like, who would be a really good guest? Like Jess, that's going to be there. It's like, you should really have Anastasia on. I'm like, why have I never had you on before? I am so sorry. This is 8 years of podcasting. I've never had you on. I apologize.
I'm a newbie. This is my voyage right here.
Oh my gosh.
It's my first rodeo on your podcast.
You are, it's ridiculous. But the message that we're going to be talking about today is I think an incredible one. It's one that I think all of us have problems with though.
Yes.
And so it's going to transcend dentistry. It's going to transcend, it'll, personal life, professional life. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We're going to be talking about boundaries. And I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about, where do we get started with this?
For me personally, I was never taught about healthy boundaries. So a lot of factors, a lot of years in my life, we go through things and we could just feel it in our spirit. And you can feel it, whether it's your time, your emotions, your energy. And you're like, what am I going to do with that? And it's interesting because in dentistry, we're taught how to communicate with our patients, case present, but we're not taught about that to set healthy boundaries in our personal lives or our professional lives. Because there's a way you talk to your employer also and a way you shouldn't. Say some things because it becomes aggressive, not professional, so on and so forth. So I started this quest after my mom had passed, and I just felt like pressure from a lot of people, and I'm like, how do I start this? So I just thought of a road trip, because we take a lot of road trips with Gibbs, and I'm like, okay. And it's funny because David and I will talk about what we like and what we don't like. I'm like, I think we're onto something here. So one of my pet peeves would be, and David does not do this, just for clarity, Dr. Rice does not do this, but is to have your bare feet up on the dashboard. That's my pet peeve.
Yeah.
But I was raised you don't say anything to somebody. If that's their car, then that's, you don't say anything. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to flip it. What's one of your pet peeves if someone's driving with you and you're going down the road? What would be just a pet peeve for you?
It's probably not a popular one, but if I'm the driver, don't touch the radio. Yes. I'm in charge of the radio. You don't get to tell me, if you don't want me falling asleep at the wheel and crashing us all, then the radio's mine.
Right. You're in charge of the playlist.
Yeah.
You're in charge. Yes.
Yeah, that's my husband. My husband's like that. He won't let you mess with the radio if he's driving. That's his rule. Whoever's driving, they do that.
Exactly. Yeah. If I'm in the passenger seat, it's up to you. Whatever we listen to.
Yeah.
Mine
yours?
Mine would probably be eating crunchy food while I'm driving.
That's an interesting one too.
Because it's distracting and it's I'm just, that's my thing.
Okay.
The foil or something.
The foil
or
that cringy thing.
Chewing
or
gum and that smacking.
Yeah, smacking or noise.
But
I have kids,
loud noises
right?
all of a sudden.
Yeah, I have kids too, so you know what I'm talking about.
Know.
But if you think about it, and those are our pet peeves outside of children, for any parents out there, if you think about it, we carry those people with us in our metaphorical cars being our body, right?
Right.
And what we should really sit back and say is, it's okay to have this person go to the mall with me, go to a concert with me, but do you want them along for the ride of your life? So that's where the idea just, I guess I would say it blossomed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really interesting because I think, I don't think I've been really good about setting personal boundaries, but also even in that one exercise that we just did, I've never had to identify the things that have ever bothered me before, which is, I think, like self-reflection, not my strong. I don't know if you are good at that.
I don't think I am either.
I don't think we're taught it. Like what we
Yeah.
really are taught is don't get in a van with a stranger who has a puppy and offers you candy.
Right.
Right.
And yet we get into Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but we don't let these people into our lives and we have no self-reflection because we're just really not taught, right? Like
Yeah.
your traditions, you're taught by your family. Your identity, you're taught about the people who you're around. So it's very fascinating as I just started to discover, wow, how can I do this? What about my time? So I focus on my time and my emotions and my energy. And I just cannot believe like how much it's changed my communication and my relationships in my personal and professional life. Because I don't believe in balance. There's no work-life balance. It's work-life wellness. Something in your life is
I
always
like
going to be
that.
out of balance, in my humble opinion. So if
Sure.
you look at it from a health and wellness standpoint, I'm going to live a work-life wellness lifestyle.
I love that. That's
So if you,
deep.
if you identify like, okay, let's take time, for example, because I think time for all of us is the one thing, because you can never make up what you've lost
You're right.
on that particular aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which of course now this self-reflection, like, yeah, people that waste my time do bother me. Like, quit wasting my time.
This is going to hit
this
home
is-
for him. I
this
have a
is-
feeling.
If I end up in tears by the end of this thing, Anastasia, we're going to have an issue. So, but with time though, because time is so precious. Time is in dentistry. We're like, okay, I'm okay working on every hour we have this patient. Within the first 10 minutes, we're going to do this. Like that's so structured, so easy. I'm getting paid for that time. I don't ever feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I don't think I'm wasting. Even if my patient doesn't show up, I'm not wasting because I could be doing other things. I'm okay in those confines, right? But I feel like when I feel like people are wasting my time or they're, taking advantage of me and my time, I like to volunteer. I like to give of my time and efforts. But if they're wasting it or taking advantage, I don't like it. But where I've had an issue before was when we're trying to set the boundary, I feel like I might be setting it wrong because it is always a volatile reaction from them, not from me. I come in with like niceness and trying to have pure intention, but trying to explain where I'm coming from, but they never receive it right.
Right. And it
I'm so sorry.
look at, no, and you know what? I feel you and I hear where you're coming from, because when we have something that does not agree with us, and especially disrespecting time, think in dentistry. Look at how we react when a patient is 10 minutes late. That's
Yeah.
disrespectful, right?
And then they want to use the restroom, right? That's always the complaint. So it's even more of a waste of time.
Where were you? Did you just
Weren't you
drink
not
10
going to-
gallons of water? I mean,
Yeah.
is this like your ritual before? Sorry, that's
Yeah.
so sidetracked.
No, but yes.
No, it's true though.
Where were you? But so you can understand, to me, that sounds like how you're saying, hey, this person disrespected my time, or you're showing up late for an appointment. Maybe I'm just going to say podcast because we're here. What if that was late? That's your time. And everybody's time is valuable. And until we actually express that, these other individuals, the reason, even if you were nice, let's say you explained it kindly, assertively, and kindly, which is what I always say. So there's a difference. So even if you shared, hey, you know what, next time, let's just plan it for maybe 10 minutes earlier, and that way we can buffer in some traffic time.
Sure.
Or something like that. If they are upset after you are assertively kind and clear for expectations, then they're upset because now they were getting away with something and you kind of called them on it, right? You
Right.
gave them, you checked. And when people take advantage of boundaries because you didn't have any, and now that you're starting to set them up, you will see pushback.
Yeah.
I love that. Assertively kind and clear.
Yes. You got to set the boundaries. That's a really big thing with healthy boundaries. And two things I always tell people is you have to ask yourself, is this a healthy request? Whether it be for me. So, for example, we'll use time. Is this a healthy request and is it realistic? Yeah. because sometimes too, I'll admit, I'm like in Anastasia's world, I'd like for this to happen. Is it healthy? I think it is. Is it realistic? Probably not, right? Like it's
Sure.
just,
Yeah.
there's just certain things. But so those would be the two things that I would guide you to say. Is it healthy and is it realistic? Because that will also guide you to be assertive, clear, and kind.
Do you feel like you could have healthy boundaries that are set for different people? So, for example, taking the time still, exactly, where I think where probably I'm also making a mistake is I don't set that boundary until I'm frustrated with that person. And it means it's like a repeat offense. It's a this or that or whatever. Meanwhile, if this third party person that we both know is doing exactly the same thing to me, that person sees it but knows that I'm letting them get away with it because they don't do it very often. And I want to give grace and I want to be kind and I want to do all these things. Can I set one boundary healthily for one and not set it for another? Or is that just setting myself up for failure?
Great question, first of all. And it's not complicated, but they're your boundaries. So boundaries help us to form our identity, to form our values, our beliefs. So your boundaries are yours and they're not rigid. I think that's where my perception came in, is like they're just so rigid. They're very flexible. And sometimes you do have to have them different with different people. And it could be the same time. It may be whether it's whatever that is. So to answer your question, yes, you do have different sets or buckets for different people because your boundaries basically help to protect you. And when you express them and you hold to that, that's the other thing, you have to follow through. That gives them respect because they're respecting you to know this is what I can expect from Andrew. So I'm gaining respect and I'm giving respect. And isn't that a good place to be? Versus just it always being one-sided, and that's where you feel that unrest in your soul.
Yeah.
Absolutely feel that unrest. I recently had that happen where I showed up twice to a meeting with an individual and they didn't show up to the meeting. And I was like, that is my time. And that just bothered me. And it happens to be somebody who's like really big in our industry. And so I thought it was such a cool, but then I thought at the same time, I'm like I've gave up my time twice.
Correct.
Like I get you're probably busy. We're all busy, but like, don't disrespect me in that manner. And
Right.
I kind of came back with some really clear boundaries. Like, look, if we're going to set a meeting, like you need to show up from here on out.
Right. And here's where, like, I understand things happen.
Then just communicate with me. Exactly. And that's what I said. If
I
there's something that
expect something
comes up,
15 minutes ahead of time or
please-
whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
because it is, and it creates an environment or it negates the relationship and the project that we're working on, right?
Absolutely.
Because now I don't have that trust in this individual that they're going to have my best interest at heart.
Correct. Yes. And even with friends, because I've done that too. So it's ghosting. I call it ghosting. Is there's nothing. Like you don't even know, are they on the planet? I don't know.
Yeah.
Did they take off with, I don't even know. Elon Musk, are they somewhere around, on satellites, just twirling around? Like, we don't know.
The lower orbit of
I've-
the Earth.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I've had it where I personally, here's what I say for myself. If I have to put my makeup on and shave my legs, you better show up.
Amen,
Seriously?
sister. Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I
I could be in sweatpants and have you ghost me. It's okay, but I didn't have to shave my legs for this. I didn't have to do my hair or, dry shampoo. Like, thank you. But you get what I'm saying. So for me personally, I've had a couple of friends ghost. And I know them that their intentions are good. However, and to your point earlier, they are now, I could end the relationship if it gets that frustrated, right? Like, so you have to decide what's healthy for you. For me personally, what I chose to do is you don't get dinner with me anymore until I can see that you're showing up. What you can have is coffee and lunch because I'm good with that. But no, this dinner where, I don't have to shave my legs for lunch.
Yeah.
It's it's lunch.
This reminds me of
Andrew's like, dear Lord, are
I'm
we
like, how many
really
times do you
here?
shave your legs?
I
Good
mean,
golly.
This reminds me so much. So I have a 10-year-old little girl, and I literally recently, that you sound like her, because she literally, she got dressed up to go to a play.
Yes.
And her dad forgot to get the tickets. And literally, he was like, well, let's go do something. He was like, well, we'll just stay at home and watch a movie. And she looked at him and she goes, do you see what I did? I got
Yes.
dressed up for you.
And she's 10.
Oh
And
my
she's
gosh.
10.
Takes after her mother.
And I was like, oh, shoot. I was like, Oh gosh.
I love the sass a little bit though.
I know, but it was like mad respect.
She's setting the boundary.
Because she set that boundary, and I love the fact that somehow, some way that is instilled in her.
Right. Right.
You know, because she did. She looked at him and she was like,
Yeah,
I
and
got
then
dressed
follow
up for
through
you.
with it. You
I
know what I
shaved my
mean?
legs for you.
Right. I did my makeup. I mean,
did my
honestly, if I have to
makeup.
put mascara on for you, like that's just.
She's like, we're going somewhere.
effort. If I have to
so
put
funny.
effort into my appearance for you in any way, like if I have to, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, then if I have to get out of my yoga pants and a tank top, then we need to do something. You need to show up. You need to show up.
We live in Florida, so we don't need to get changed out of that very often.
Well, no, but a fresh pair
Yeah.
of yoga pants would be nice.
so
I'm keeping it real, folks. It's not. I mean, I'm keeping it real.
and I love
I
this.
love that.
I'm thinking about some friends that have maybe disappeared out of my life, and sometimes there's got to be a healthy way to set a boundary, and because I think people that I may have offended or hurt or I ruined the relationship unintentionally. Like no one told me that I'm hurting a boundary or
Right.
crossing a boundary or whatever. So there's got to be a healthy way to set that boundary.
Yes. Do you mean to inquire like a question to them to open up a conversation, or?
I'm not even sure. I'm just trying to think of my responsibility is to make sure that I set the boundary for others. I don't think they ever set a boundary with me, so I feel kind of bad about the breakup of the conversation, and so therefore I don't want to be that person that didn't tell Misty that she's annoying the crap out of me right now, and therefore we're never going to talk after this meeting ever again.
Okay. Right.
Which is what's going to happen. No, just kidding. I'm setting a boundary now, buddy. No, just kidding. You know what I mean? She shouldn't ever have to wonder why I disappeared out of her life.
Right.
I owe it to her to set a boundary.
You
Right.
do owe it to, and you, first and foremost, you owe it to yourself to set a boundary. So I'm going to harp on
Ooh, I
your
like
self-reflection. You owe it to yourself first. And then the other people in your orbit, then yes, you do. But yourself first, and you have to figure out what is that. So before you go to somebody who is out of your life to question yourself, why am I noticing? What was going on in my life then? And how can I express what I want to intentionally, And again, is this a relationship that I want to re-engage in? Because then there's two questions. Is it healthy and is it realistic? Because sometimes, too, friendships will end. Business, relationships, they do end. But set that boundary with yourself first and always ask, the self-reflection. If you're going to state something, it would be like, I feel. So I feel really overwhelmed, or I noticed, we haven't communicated in months. Hey, I'd really like to connect. I hope everything's going well. Or just, to open that up. If you feel there's a boundary you need to set, then that's a whole other stratosphere, so to speak. Keeping it into the orbit.
My brain is just thinking, because I actually do have a situation going on with a friend that I guess she was upset that I hung out with another friend. Mm-hmm. And she felt like we can't be friends. I know it's so high school. I know, but it was she literally was like, we can't be friends if you're going to hang out with this person. And I'm like, but I like this person. I like both of you. I don't want to have to pick. And then at the same time, then I got kind of mad about it because I was like, nobody tells me who I can be friends with.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not assertive, just for
Right.
clarity. I understand you. You get that, but take a pause. And if
Yeah.
you were to say something, I would say, you know what? I really appreciate your friendship and I value our time together. However, I really do enjoy this other person's company. They're also a positive influence in my life.
Right.
And I hope you can understand my decision when I choose to go to coffee or grab a drink or whatever.
Be friends with both of you.
That's very nice and non-confrontational, but you're also setting the boundary saying, you know what? I like her too, and this is going to be a friendship. I'm not backing down from this friendship.
Correct. Because
communication is sexy. We just don't use it.
Yeah.
It is
You
true.
know,
You're so,
right?
You're
to say
so true,
I
'cause-
value you, I appreciate you, and that way it lets them know you're not coming at them to run them over with this request.
Right. No, and I had the conversation that I valued her and I valued friendship, but I haven't had the conversation yet because I think it is that that confrontation,
Right.
and that I'm scared to have the fact that Well, I still want to be friends with her too.
Right.
So I just kind of left it as I value your opinion. I value what you said.
Yes.
But I didn't set that other boundary. And as we sit here and do it, I'm thinking through that myself. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I really need to kind of go back and have that conversation because it wasn't fair to her that I didn't say, hey, I love you and I value our friendship.
Right.
But also at the same time, I also value this friendship as
Right.
well. And to me, they're two separate things.
They are. And you can set it up for her too, because you may be in a space to talk about it and she may not be. And likewise for you, Andrew, you might be in a space, but the other person may not be. So I always call them curious questions. So to ask like, hey, is this a good time for you to talk? I'd like to have 20 minutes of your time. You know, I mean, I always say 20 just because it could go less and maybe, or is there a time, are you pressed for time? Do you have a hard stop at 20 minutes? And this way it kind of lets them know, like, hey, if we're going to have a discussion, are they in a space? Because we don't know where they were at either. What was their
True.
day like? What is their, did they have a really bad business day or something going on in their personal life? So it's just really understanding. It's two-way street, right? So it's just asking those curious questions. And if you know you're going to say something, you could always say, hey, outside of like, do you have the emotional space for this? Do you have bonus bandwidth? I'd like to vent. Do you have time for that? You know what I mean? And that way people are like, you're prefacing what you're going to do instead of like, bleh.
I love that bonus bandwidth.
Yeah, bonus bandwidth.
So alliterative. I like it.
Tell me
Right?
more about bonus bandwidth.
You just had, let's just say you're really tired and somebody comes to you and they want to vent, so your bonus bandwidth means you will be present and you will actively listen to somebody as they share with you whatever that is. So you need extra bandwidth because we only have so much in a day. I mean, like, we're emotionally exhausted from making all these decisions, like 35,000 decisions, I think, in a day is what we're aimed at per day. Wow. So if you think of
I'm
decision,
exhausted all the time.
I know, right?
So many
decision-making fatigue. So, I mean, like, you might have, a little extra juice. So it's nice to ask that other person may have it, or are they depleted? If they're depleted, not a time to ask.
It's interesting, like the whole introspective thing, because I don't know why I noticed that I'm not in some of these people's lives, and I think I pulled away. Honestly, like nothing ever happened. Like, and I think that's the majority of the stuff. Like nothing ever happened. We just drifted apart, or we just both got busy, or whatever. But now all of a sudden, why do I care? Like,
Correct.
Why is that now in my head? And do I even need to rekindle that relationship? Because like, I haven't seen that person for 15 years. Like, why does that matter?
It's a question to ask yourself.
Interesting.
Yeah, because
I don't know if I like
doesn't
the
mean
answer,
it's
though.
bad because, there are people in our lives, like, David and I, we don't have kids. We have Gibbs, right? So people who do have children, we don't see them as often because that's their priority, right? Our pack is our priority. And we're in different phases of life. So sometimes it'll go years till you see certain people. However, there are other times where, I have had to end friendships. It was hard. I mean, it was really difficult. Yet, when you do set the boundary and it continues to be crossed, you have to decide, like, how many times am I going to allow this? And that's the word. They're violating your boundary. Why are you allowing it?
Question for you, Misty. It's more of a curiosity. Like, so do you feel like you did the first part of the conversation, but you didn't have the second part of the conversation because you were scared of losing this friendship if you had that conversation?
Yes.
Or you learned, okay. It's not like you just learned, like, you need to probably have that part of the conversation.
Well, yeah, I think that because I do value her friendship tremendously, and I love her. And the crazy part is she introduced me to this person and said, hey, this person's really cool, and you guys would really get along, and you guys would jam. And we really did jam. And then, too, our husbands really so they created a friendship. So now it's like, my husband and her husband are probably more friends than even me and the other girl. So it even complicates it a little bit more.
Sure.
But the conversation is that something occurred between them, I guess. I'm not privy to that. But she was like, I really don't want you to hang out with her. And, and I told her, I said, look, I value the fact that you said that. I value the fact that you were honest and truthful with me about how you felt.
Yes, it's a big deal.
And you didn't like the fact that you saw us together, right?
Yeah.
I value that. And I appreciate that you had that conversation. And I value your friendship. But also, I kind of said, it's uncomfortable for somebody to tell me that I can't be friends with somebody. And also, that's the worst thing to ever tell me, is if you tell me no, then I'm like, whatever, I'll do
Right.
it.
You can't do this, yeah.
Right.
So that's
right.
just my personality. So also, it was kind of like in a roundabout way to her at that point was like, probably not the best way. Like, I appreciate what you said, but like coming at like, I can't be friends with this person.
She
like,
doesn't get to set your boundaries for you.
yes, exactly.
That's not healthy.
And that's not healthy. And I felt like that
and
was.
that's not realistic.
And it's not realistic. And also, our friendship completely changed from that point on because I felt like she crossed a boundary of mine that made me feel uncomfortable. So much so I was uncomfortable because I didn't have the conversation with her, right, going further. But it is something that I do need to address, and I do need to, because just like you're sitting there saying, like, you're having this moment of like, oh, should I rekindle this friendship, or
I'm
how
waiting
should
for
I?
him to cry.
Right?
It's coming. Don't worry.
You know,
I'm getting teary-eyed already.
but it's true because, you know, you have those like things that live inside of us, and as we have this conversation, I haven't even
yes.
thought about this. So I'm like having therapy with Anastasia today.
Honestly, it does feel like this. But that's what boundary is. I mean, boundaries
It
are
is.
kind of therapeutic in a way. And I think that
Because this is making me think through this.
So we're talking about, I mean, we talked about time. This is starting to feel more like the emotional boundary setting. But I feel like emotional boundary setting is a little bit more abstract than like time. Like time is so easy to set boundaries with.
It's not, though.
You don't think
It's
so?
not in today's digital era world. It's not. If you think about how many things distract us, how many, you know, yes, we can say we're not on time for a business meeting, or like somebody didn't show up for me with, you know, plans for dinner. But right here, I'm holding it. Right now, we're talking into it. And there are so many people that will sit around and we'll all be on our phones. And it's like, we have more connection with Wi-Fi than we do sitting around a table.
How sad.
Right?
I think that is really sad when you go in. I see that amongst the youth so much that they will literally sit at a table with each other and actually text each other and have conversations through their phones. And I'm like, what happened to that real conversation?
Yes.
And being able to talk with individuals. And I think that is something that we really are going to
I don't think they
suffer.
know how to do it, though. I don't think it's like I don't think they're like intentionally trying to be.
I don't think
because
they're
those-
intentionally.
They just don't know different.
They just don't know any
that's their
different.
real. Yeah.
But if you even think about, like, so there's phubbing, and phubbing is when you're sitting next to somebody and they would rather choose to pick up their phone instead of sitting next to you. So let's just say you
Oh
and your
my
husband.
gosh, that would drive me
you and your-
crazy.
Right. Right.
Pet peeve right
Like,
there again, Anastasia. I have another one.
I mean, and you're sitting next to your significant other or a girlfriend, even at dinner, doesn't matter, wherever you are. And as soon as this little sucker comes up, their attention is drawn away. And how does it make you feel?
Not
Why am
valued.
I there? Right. I just
Makes you
feel like
feel-
I'm space. I'm just like, I just feel disrespected. I feel that I'm not valued. My time is not valued. And that's flipping it to where we first started, is disrespecting my time. You know, so it's very interesting, and that's an interesting conversation. But I do feel our time is taken for granted so much that we don't realize that there are apps and things to help us. I call it time mindfulness. You know, to be mindful with your time. It's not time management, because like we roll our eyes at time management at this stage of the game. Honestly, we do. We're like, oh, please. But time mindfulness, to be mindful of where you are. When do you leave the house to go to work? When are you ready to, you know, like I was the person that was always running late to my dates with David, or if we're going out to dinner. And then as I'm writing this book, I'm like, oh, dear Lord, I'm going to have to like practice what I preach, right? And now, I mean, he will tell I'm on time. Now it takes me, I have to get ready earlier because, you know, you just have to get ready earlier as a woman. He can like get in a shower and he's done in like 10 minutes. Us, it's like hour at best.
Well, you got to shave your legs.
Right, and makeup.
Both of them.
And makeup.
Put clothes on. You know, that's a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We may live in Florida, but...
No, I hear you on that. Well, no, you know,
But do you know what I mean? So it's being
Yeah.
respectful of that, and that actually makes me feel good too. Whereas before, I just I didn't think. I was like, well, people, you know, it's okay. But it's not okay.
Let me ask this, though. This is your personal relationship, so maybe you could say not the truth, but if you don't want to. Did David ever say, it bothers me when you're late?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that would be the disrespect of time.
Yes.
For me, I wouldn't necessarily care as much. Like, that's not a value for me, for my partner, as opposed to a business meeting, as opposed to also being a little bit late versus 20 minutes late versus an hour late. Like, there's a whole different thing. But here's the interesting thing. Culture. I lived in a culture, the Philippines, for years. They are Filipino time. They're island time, like Hawaiians. Like they're they're chronically late for everything. And it would be for important things like church. Like church doesn't start at 10 o'clock. It starts at 10:10 or whatever. Like the pastor doesn't get up in time. You know, like whatever. Those maybe they couldn't get the. We're getting into the weeds here, but like they couldn't get the travel to get to the place. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I think there's a lot of forgiveness in that because their economy is not what our economy. We don't just jump. We jump in a car and we're there. Like we can do these things. They don't have that luxury. They don't have cars. It's public transit, and there's these things called tricycles. Is like, are they going by their house at the right time to flag them down to get them there or not? It's all thing. For like the phone thing, you are causing me all sorts of things to think about. Because, well, I don't know if I just don't pay attention in life.
Awesome?
I think I pay attention in life, but maybe I don't. It is awesome. I mean, it's amazing.
I feel that we're on autopilot, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I just feel like, we're taking a road trip, but we're on autopilot because we have so many things that make our lives easier that we're just not paying attention and we're still so distracted and disconnected. So the thing that was meant to connect us is actually disconnecting us.
Yeah.
Right? So it helps us learn that we really do have to rely on our words. And we're not taught about our words. We're just taught different things growing up. But is that, are those our values? Like holiday traditions. My holiday traditions growing up are different from, David's families or your families or your like we all have different things that we did. Does that make them right or wrong? No. But it's funny how we impose and inflict how you have to have this tradition. And it's like, are you serious right now? Santa has boundaries. He only comes out once a year. I mean, he only works like one night and he delegates duties to his elves. I mean, like this is a big thing.
Oh. So speaking of boundaries,
the lights just went.
5 o'clock,
I
the
told
lights
you
went
at
out.
5
They're
o'clock
telling
the
us
lights go out.
that
They
we're
kick me out
done.
at 5. I was here yesterday.
Oh my gosh, that's actually really funny. I kind of like that a lot. It puts that like exclamation point on our conversation so much.
It's time to set your boundaries, people.
Yes. Anastasia, you've been awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Tell the listeners where they can find more about you if they want to reach out to you. The book, I mean, whatever.
The book is called The Highway to Health, Riding the Road to Better Boundaries, and you can find me at anastasiaturchetta.com. And if you're interested in pet health tips, that types of things, it's gibbsthehusky.com.
Oh, I love it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love
Thank you so much
thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.